In the quiet suburbs of a bustling city lived a man named Arthur Finch. By all accounts, he was ordinary. He worked a mundane 9-to-5, lived in a modest home, and kept to himself. But beneath this placid surface, a meticulous and brilliant mind was at work, planning what he believed would be the perfect crime. For years, Arthur had been observing the movements of a local, privately owned museum. It housed a collection of rare jewels, the centerpiece of which was the azure tear, a sapphire of breathtaking size and clarity. Arthur wasn't motivated by greed. Not in the traditional sense, he was a puzzle solver, an architect of schemes. The museum's security system was his ultimate challenge, a complex lock he was determined to pick. He spent months studying blueprints he'd acquired online, memorizing guard patrol schedules, and analyzing the infrared sensors and pressure plates. He even built a scale model of the museum in his basement to practice his every move. He learned the exact timing of the cleaning crew, the blind spots in the camera coverage, and the precise frequency of the alarm system. His plan was a symphony of precision. He would enter through a ventilation shaft on the roof during a brief 3-minute window when the rooftop camera panned away. He had fashioned a special suit to mask his heat signature from the infrared sensors. He knew the code to the secondary keypad by observing a careless guard from afar with a high-powered lens. He would disable the laser grid around the azure tear's pedestal using a custom-built signal jammer. His exit strategy was just as flawless, leaving no trace, no fingerprints, no fibers. He even prepared a solid alibi, attending a late-night movie and keeping the ticket stub. The night of the heist arrived. A cloak of fog hung over the city, a perfect accomplice. Everything went according to plan. The ventilation shaft was stiff but yielded. The hallways were silent, patrolled only by predictable beams of light. His heart hammered in his chest, not with fear, but with the thrill of execution. He reached the main gallery. There it was, the azure tear, resting on its velvet cushion, pulsing with a deep blue light under the single spotlight. He moved with the grace of a dancer who had rehearsed 1,000 times. He disabled the laser grid, the red beams vanishing into nothingness. He approached the glass case. He had a special suction tool to lift the heavy lid without triggering the pressure sensors beneath the pedestal. He lifted the lid, his hands steady. He reached in, his fingers closing around the cool, heavy gem. A surge of triumph washed over him. He had done it. He had conquered the unconquerable. He carefully placed a replica, a worthless piece of cut glass he had crafted himself, back in its place. He lowered the lid, reactivated the laser grid, and retraced his steps. The exit was as smooth as the entry. Back in his car, miles away, he allowed himself a small, triumphant smile. The azure tear was nestled safely in a lead-lined box in his passenger seat. He drove home, sticking to the speed limit, just another late-night driver on an empty road. The next morning, the news was everywhere. Daring jewel, heist baffles police. Experts were astounded. They declared it the work of a master criminal, a ghost. There was no forced entry, no tripped alarms, no forensic evidence. Arthur watched the reports from his living room, sipping his morning coffee, a quiet sense of satisfaction warming him. He had created the perfect puzzle, one that no one could solve. The sapphire itself was a secondary prize. The true reward was the victory. Days turned into weeks. The police investigation stalled. The media frenzy died down. Arthur kept the azure tear hidden, never intending to sell it. It was his trophy, a secret symbol of his intellect. He would occasionally take it out in the dead of night, admiring how the moonlight fractured through its facets, a private treasure for a private genius. He felt untouchable, invisible. He had considered every variable, every possibility, every contingency, except for one. One Tuesday afternoon, a few weeks after the heist, Arthur was at the local grocery store. He was picking out produce, debating between romaine and iceberg lettuce, when he felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to see a small, elderly woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile. She looked familiar, but he couldn't quite place her. "Excuse me," she said, her voice soft. "You're Arthur, right? You live down the street from the museum." Arthur nodded, a knot of unease tightening in his stomach. "Yes, that's me." "I thought so," she said, her smile widening. "I'm Mrs. Gable. I cleaned at the museum in the evenings." "Well, I used to," she sighed. "Things have been so tense since the robbery." Arthur offered a sympathetic murmur, his mind racing. Was this a trap, a setup? But she seemed harmless, just a sweet old lady. "You know," she continued, leaning in a little, "it's the strangest thing. The police, the experts, they're all looking for some high-tech ghost, but I think they're missing the simple stuff." Arthur asked, trying to sound casual as he placed a head of lettuce in his cart. "Yes, you see, for the last 6 months, every Tuesday and Friday night, right around 10:30, someone has been leaving a small saucer of milk on the back ledge by the generator." Arthur froze. His blood ran cold. The saucer of milk. It was for a stray cat, Mrs. Gable explained. "A little calico, skinny little thing. I named her Patches. I always made sure to leave it for her before I finished my shift. But on the night of the robbery, the saucer was empty when I got there. And the next morning, my supervisor found it moved, placed neatly by the bins. Only someone who knew my little routine, who knew I wouldn't be back to check on it until my shift ended, would have moved it to get to that ventilation shaft above the generator. Arthur's meticulously constructed world began to crumble. He had accounted for guards, cameras, lasers, and sensors. He had studied blueprints and schedules. But he had never, not once, accounted for a kind cleaning lady and her affection for a stray cat. Mrs. Gable looked at him, her gaze unwavering but not unkind. I told the detectives about the milk, about Patches, and I told them about the quiet man who walks his dog past the museum every single night at 10:30. The man who always smiled and said hello. The man who saw me leave that saucer of milk, night after night. Arthur couldn't speak. He had been so focused on the complex machinery of the crime that he had completely overlooked the simple, human element. His perfect plan, his masterpiece of logic and precision, was unraveled by an act of kindness he'd witnessed and dismissed as insignificant. The most advanced security system in the city was defeated, but the crime was solved by a saucer of milk, a stray cat, and the observant eyes of a cleaning lady who paid attention to the small details of the world around her. In the end, it wasn't the technology that caught him. It was the humanity he forgot to factor in. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more.